Forget running out of air. Forget engine failure. Forget the slow creep of cabin fever or the loneliness of a 500-day cruise liner to nowhere. The thing that will end the first Mars crew won't be mechanical. It will be the tiny, invisible hand of the galaxy itself, reaching right inside their skulls. We call them GCRs, galactic cosmic rays. These are not X-rays. They are microscopic bullets, the naked nuclei of heavy elements like iron, accelerated by ancient supernova, moving at 99.9% the speed of light. They are kinetic perfection. Aluminum, the typical material for spacecraft hulls, does not stop them. It merely fragments them into a shower of secondary radiation, like shrapnel tearing through the sensitive machinery inside. The most sensitive machinery in the known universe, in fact, the human brain. We are apes. Clever, hyper-communicative, tool-using apes. Yes, but apes all the same. And evolution optimized us for exactly one place, a perfect, shielded, warm bubble called Earth. Our magnificent intelligence rests upon a nervous system so exquisitely fragile that it requires kilometers of atmosphere and a violently churning magnetic field just to function without disruption. Deep space rips that contract up. It laughs at our flimsy little spaceship walls. You must understand that the human brain, specifically the hippocampus and the prefrontal cortex, the parts responsible for memory, decision-making, and emotional control, are densely packed with neurons that do not readily regenerate. These structures, the very seat of our humanity and competence, are the primary targets of these galactic shrapnel storms. The current strategy is a joke. Shielding adds weight, weight adds cost, cost prohibits the mission. So, the reality is that the astronauts will accept a lethal dose of biological damage, banking on their high level of training to counteract the molecular damage they sustain every single second outside the magnetosphere. This is the great delusion. Radiation doesn't just slightly damage memory. It causes neurodegeneration. It shears off dendritic spines. Studies show chronic exposure induces cognitive impairment that looks terrifyingly like accelerated aging, but with an evolutionary kick. We are sending biological machines, highly dependent on precise chemical signaling, into a cosmic particle accelerator expecting them to perform complex orbital mechanics and high-stakes troubleshooting. They won't. They will regress. The biggest lie in space travel isn't that Mars is habitable. The biggest lie is that the astronauts will remain astronauts. They will become irritable. They will become paranoid. The radiation scrambles the finely tuned circuitry responsible for impulse control and complex planning, the very systems that differentiate the mission commander from a territorial chimpanzee. They will regress to a primal state accelerated by external stimuli they cannot escape. Highly trained specialists locked in a pressurized can, becoming emotionally volatile and cognitively crippled. Think about the potential for mission failure then. It stops being a physics problem and becomes a psychology problem, a pure evolutionary failure. If you value the inconvenient, brutal truth over the sanitized version of the future the space agencies sell, if you understand that real knowledge begins where comfortable delusion ends, you belong here. Now, let's talk about the specific cells being destroyed. We're not talking about skin cancer. We are talking about the microglial cells, the brain's internal immune system. They become inflamed. They start eating the very neural connections they are supposed to protect. The hippocampus shrinks. Memories fail. But worse than memory loss is the catastrophic impact on the commander's ability to maintain social cohesion, to filter fear, to maintain the professional distance required to keep 3 other irradiated apes alive. They become exactly what we evolved from: unstable, volatile, dangerous. We're not sending explorers. We are sending unstable, confused primates to an enclosed environment far from any help. And the crewmates will notice. They will know they are traveling with someone whose judgment is slowly, chemically decomposing. The deep space journey is not a technological hurdle. It is a biological attrition test, and our biology is guaranteed to fail it. It's what we deserve for leaving the bubble. We are walking away from the magnetic field that defined our intelligence. What do you think happens when you unplug the brain from its safety net? Chaos. Total molecular chaos. That's the mission profile. That chaos leaks out. It saturates the environment. Imagine watching it happen. You, the payload specialist, the mechanic, are suddenly tasked with judging the sanity of the person flying the ship, the person holding the code to the life support. Your commander starts forgetting why they are even there. Seriously, their short-term memory evaporates like spilled water in a vacuum, a direct neurological hit to the hippocampus, courtesy of a passing iron atom traveling at relativistic speed. You, the crewmate, are calculating the trajectory, running the diagnostics, while simultaneously managing a slow-motion mental collapse beside you. It is not a malfunction you can fix with a wrench. It's biological treason. The body is betraying the mind. Now they are hyper-aware of the radiation counters ticking up, that rhythmic click that sounds like a countdown timer to their own psychotic break. They will become children wearing uniforms. They start seeing conspiracies in static. Every flicker of the display, every delayed message from Earth becomes proof of malicious intent. They stop trusting the readouts. They stop trusting you. The mission parameters? Irrelevant. Survival becomes a zero-sum game played out in 3 dimensions. A brutal evolutionary calling where trust is a liability. You cannot cooperate with a mind that is actively destroying its own capacity for logic. If you are here because you demand the uncomfortable truth, the analysis that cuts through the lies, then make sure you are anchored to this channel. This is where the real debriefing happens. Now, look closer at the command structure breaking down. The moment the commander stops acting like an astronaut and starts acting like a frightened animal defending its territory, the entire chain of control implodes. You, the crew, have zero legal or practical recourse. Who do you call? Houston. They are minutes, maybe hours, behind the information curve, communicating through a vast, icy void. The crew is forced into an immediate, irreversible, and terrifying power vacuum. This is the unwritten law of deep space. Authority is held not by rank, but by functional sanity. What happens when sanity is chemically eroding at 30,000 miles an hour? Mutiny becomes necessity. Self-preservation demands immediate psychological triage. Someone has to step up. Someone has to incapacitate the commander before the commander makes a catastrophic, impulsive decision, a maneuver error, an oxygen vent, a failure to initiate a burn. Think about the ethical horror of restraining a colleague, a friend, maybe your superior officer, knowing that they are not malicious but simply irradiated, chemically unable to inhibit their own worst impulses. They are simply brain damaged, and you are the only one close enough to administer the final terrible mercy of intervention. We romanticize the astronaut. We see the bravery, the slide rules, the meticulous training. Forget all that noise. The deep space journey rips off the veneer of civilization. It exposes the raw animal underneath, the territoriality, the pure, unadulterated fear. You think you're better. Put yourself in that aluminum can, 60 million miles from the nearest functioning hospital, staring at a colleague whose eyes hold the flicker of genuine, radiation-induced madness. That is the view. That is the real payload of these deep space missions. Not moon rocks, just broken minds floating home. We built machines capable of interstellar travel, but we forgot to harden the one thing that mattered most. The 3 pounds of delicate, water-soluble jelly inside the helmet. And the agencies know this. They know the risk is fundamentally psychological, not engineering. They pour billions into shielding materials, complex algorithms, redundant systems, all to fight a physics problem. But they cannot shield the emotional core. They cannot shield the amygdala. They are relying on highly trained individuals being able to suppress their evolutionary programming under the most extreme duress imaginable. That is hubris. Pure, catastrophic hubris. The reality is simple. We evolved on Earth because of the magnetic field, because of the thick, protective atmosphere. This is our cage. When you take the animal out of the cage, its natural defenses cease to function. It becomes vulnerable, it becomes sick. And deep space does not reward vulnerability. It punishes it instantly, mercilessly, targeting the very seat of human reason. The trip is not about conquering Mars. It is about confirming our biological limitations. We are paying the ultimate price, our minds, for leaving home. We are not designed for this environment. We simply are not. Our fate is predetermined not by a booster failure, but by the relentless, quiet, molecular violence of the cosmos. The mission will fail before the engines even cut off. It fails the moment the microglial cells start eating the commander's memory. It fails the moment they realize they cannot trust the person next to them. It fails because we cannot escape ourselves. This is the biological attrition test, and humanity is guaranteed to fail. We think we are alone now, sitting in our sterile little bubbles, but that is merely preparation. Wait until the latency hits 20 minutes, turning every desperate conversation with Earth into a slow-motion scream into the void, guaranteeing that any crisis they report has already resolved itself, fatally or otherwise, before Mission Control can even formulate a useless, canned reply. That time lag isn't just signal physics. It is the physical manifestation of total abandonment. It is the universe slamming the door on any possibility of rescue or genuine human connection when it matters most. Suddenly, the crew of 4 are standing on the edge of a cliff, and the only other person they can talk to is the one who might be actively losing his mind beside them. Who do you trust then? Not the voice that arrives 40 minutes late. You trust the data. And the data, inevitably, starts screaming contradiction. The commander says the oxygen tank is stable. The telemetry stream says it isn't. Who is lying? Who is experiencing the delusion? Deep space is the ultimate crucible for paranoia because there are no external referees. There is no authority beyond the aluminum shell. They cease to be friends, cease to be colleagues, and begin morphing into walking, talking probability calculations. A risk assessment waiting to fail, consuming finite oxygen and water, potentially destabilized by radiation exposure 6 weeks ago. This level of brutal analysis, this insistence on stripping away the inspirational PR layer to look at the cold, hard, molecular truth of human frailty, is what this channel is built on. If you are here for the depth, if you refuse the comfortable lie, you need to stick around. The mission is designed to fracture the social contract itself, forcing them into a zero-sum game where the integrity of one person's mind is a direct threat to the survival of the others. The moment suspicion enters the airlock, the entire social structure disintegrates faster than a micrometeorite hitting an unprotected radiator fin. This is why mission failure will not look like an explosion or a leak. It will look quiet, insidious. It will look like a person staring blankly at the solar arrays, convinced Earth has turned into a giant snowball, and then deliberately sabotaging a vital pump because he believes he is saving humanity from cryogenic death. How do you deal with that? What is the protocol for dealing with a psychotic astronaut 60 million miles away? You train for fire. You train for decompression. But you cannot train a decent human being to execute his comrade, because that comrade's reality has fundamentally fractured. Yet that is precisely the contingency plan silently running in the background of every deep space simulator. The true red button, the one labeled non-viable crew member. I sincerely doubt anyone on the selection committee, those pale, windowless academics, has ever truly grasped the chilling logistics of that moment. They run simulations of water recycling efficiencies. They do not run simulations of justifiable murder. But the crew does. Subconsciously. They size each other up. They analyze resilience. They look for the weakness. They are constantly grading their partners on a pass-fail curve defined by ultimate survival. That tiny, lingering knowledge that you might have to kill or be killed by the man who knows your wife's name, that is the final radiation dose. It is the psychic equivalent of a solar flare ripping through the cognitive centers of the brain. They are not merely isolated from Earth. They are isolated within the habitat, trapped in a tin can, with the most dangerous animal in the universe. Another desperate human being whose priorities have shifted from global objective to immediate animal self-preservation. That shift is instant, irreversible, and entirely predictable. We should stop talking about ion propulsion and start talking about the ethics of preemptive restraint. We are sending biological time bombs into the dark. We are the wrong animal for the job. Our hardware is ancient. 300,000 years of chasing antelope on the savannah equipped us with phenomenal short-term threat assessment. Fear is useful when the predator has teeth. But what good is cortisol when the threat is metaphysical? Zero. It's useless noise. A feedback loop eating itself alive, generating demons where only silence resides. Our intelligence is a thin veneer painted over the reptilian stem. That stem demands variety. It demands friction. It demands the smell of rain, the taste of blood, the complexity of a landscape that changes constantly. That silent, endless blackness of space does not register as threatening to our lizard brain. It registers as pure absence, the ultimate nothing. And the ape brain, starved of the texture of rough bark, the subtle variations in atmospheric pressure, the sound of a distant predator, goes looking for things to fight. It manufactures the threat internally. This is the true cruelty of deep space. You can seal the hull against vacuum, but you cannot seal the mind against the terrifying evolutionary need for conflict. For real danger. We crave the struggle. It defines us. We were designed for chaos, not calibration. We were built to kill or flee, not to monitor tertiary life support systems for 5 years straight, without ever seeing a tree. If you feel that primal discomfort, if you recognize the pattern of the hidden flaw in our supposed brilliance, then maybe you are wired to see the world as it truly is. Maybe you are one of us. You belong here. Look at chimpanzees. Look at wolves. Every successful social structure demands a hierarchy, a measurable pecking order, an undeniable alpha. But the missions we design try to build a framework on consensus and psychological equality. A dangerous fantasy. When resources get truly tight, and the ultimate resource is survival itself, the ape asserts itself. Instantly. The designated commander, however highly trained, is mentally reduced to the biggest silverback gorilla in the habitat. The others instinctively search for the weak link to purge, the non-viable member to cast out or suppress. It is not malice driving that decision. It is cold, ruthless resource allocation, driven by 3 million years of brutal, necessary selection. You are either a net positive for survival, or you are ballast to be shed. The human brain cannot compartmentalize that for long. It knows the truth. It recognizes the cost of carrying dead weight. And the cost of deep space travel is too high for sentimentality. We talk about the psychological screening process as if it were a high-tech filter. We check for latent psychopathy. We check for narcissism. But we should be screening for something else entirely. For a fundamental lack of humanity. We need the individual who possesses the cold, calculating detachment of a true apex predator. Not the consensus builder, not the emotionally available partner. Those qualities are liabilities when you realize the environment itself is trying to drive you mad. The perfect astronaut is the one who accepts the biological necessity of sacrifice without flinching. The one who has already catalogued the failure points of his comrades, not out of malice, but out of professional foresight. I sincerely doubt that person exists. We keep selecting for empathy and teamwork, the very traits that will crumble fastest under sustained cosmic isolation. Empathy becomes a weapon used by the deranged to manipulate the sane. Teamwork degrades into a conspiracy of silence, where everyone knows the other is fraying, but nobody dares to break the terrifying quiet. Because the first person to call out the crack is often the first person the collective tries to eliminate. It's a self-correcting organism of fear, sealing its own wounds with denial. The real danger is not the known unknown, the stray micrometeoroid. The danger is the known known that we refuse to acknowledge. That consciousness is fundamentally unstable when removed from its evolutionary cradle. We need the tactile stimulus of pressure and release. We need gravity. We need the constant low-level drone of Earth's geomagnetic field acting as a neurological anchor. Strip all that away, and what is left is a nervous system trying desperately to find purchase on sterile stainless steel. It starts to invent signals. Hallucinations are not mission failures. They are the brain working perfectly, desperately trying to supply the sensory input it was denied. It needs the texture of reality, and when reality offers only polished plastic and recycled air, the mind simply builds a new reality, brick by terrifying brick. And the new reality, trust me, is always hostile. It features the comrade as the conspirator, the machine as the devourer, and the mission control signal as a hoax designed to keep them captive. The brain does not think I am mentally ill. It thinks the world is lying to me. That inversion is what kills missions. It is the subtle, inevitable collapse of shared reference points. You might as well be speaking different languages, you and your commander, when the sun on the solar array looks to you like a divine omen demanding total obedience, and to him, it looks like a power output reading. We are sending apes to the moon, expecting them to behave like philosophers. It's a joke, a profoundly dangerous one. The descent starts quietly. It's never a scream, not at first. It's a flicker, a slow dimming of the cognitive lights. Little things vanish first: humor, patience, the easy capacity for joy. Gone. What replaces them is a glacial, surgical suspicion. You look at your crewmate, the person who saved your life during training, and you suddenly realize they are breathing your oxygen, consuming your caloric budget. They become a resource competitor, a biological threat wrapped in a familiar, smiling flight suit. This isn't betrayal. It's a cold, statistical necessity, hardwired into a system running on 10% tolerance margins. You want to see how fast civilization breaks? Confine 5 highly educated individuals to a metal can the size of a bus for 12 months and watch the clock. They won't turn on each other with knives. They'll turn on each other with spreadsheets and logical fallacies, proving the other is the weakness, the flaw, the unacceptable variable that must be contained. Take the anonymous crew of that deep orbital habitat, the one that went silent for 48 hours back in the early 90s. They weren't fighting over rations or hierarchy. They were fighting over the floor pattern. The commander, let's call him Captain K, spent 3 days watching the textured composite tiles of the galley. He became absolutely convinced the pattern was subtly shifting, that the maintenance teams on Earth, years ago, laid those tiles specifically to create a subliminal message, only visible under the long, relentless exposure to synthetic habitat light. He didn't just see a flaw in construction. He saw malevolent intent, evil, Earth-based, manipulative intent aimed directly at him. His first officer, a brilliant engineer named Lena, tried to rationalize it. She used the digitized schematics. She deployed a laser grid to measure the spacing. She measured the angles down to the micron, but Captain K just offered that terrible, thin smile. You measure the deception, he whispered. I see the soul of the lie. He saw the design moving, shifting, morphing into a coded warning. He eventually locked down the main comms array. Why? Because the message he finally deciphered in the shifting floor, the terrifying, insistent message, was a coded instruction from a shadowy, earthbound consortium demanding that he scuttle the fusion engine to prevent humanity's escape. His reality dissolved into a cryptic, deadly puzzle only he was sane enough to solve. He was not mad. He was simply existing in an environment designed to accelerate paranoia past the speed of thought. That is the true function of deep space. It's an accelerated enlightenment machine, stripping away the comforting noise of shared reference points. You cannot stop this collapse. It is pure physics applied to consciousness. The void wins. Always. We pretend these astronauts are frontier heroes, pioneers of human spirit. They are not. They are test subjects, highly paid lab rats struggling against the inevitable, against the very boundaries of the wetware inside their skulls. We are running an experiment where the only true control group is Earth itself, and the results have been screaming at us from the telemetry data for half a century. We just keep pretending we haven't read the summary. The real sin of the space program is not the cost or the occasional spectacular disaster. It is the hubris of believing we can export human instability into the quiet crucible of vacuum and somehow expect stability to emerge. We built the perfect isolation chamber and were shocked when it produced the perfect insanity. We treat the brain like an accessory, a processor that can be fed new data sets. But it is an ecological organ. It needs the mud. It needs the distant sound of ocean surf. It needs the gentle vibration of tectonic plates grinding beneath your feet. Deny it that complexity and it will conjure its own mud, its own tectonic plates. But they will be made of fear, and they will be grinding right inside your skull. Every flicker in the peripheral vision, every unexpected metallic scent, every change in the hum of the air circulation system becomes proof. Proof that they know. Proof that the conspiracy is closing in. And you, the heroic explorer, become the last bastion of true insight in a universe actively lying to you. This is the existential black hole that awaits us on Mars, waiting for that 5-month delay in comms, when the Earth finally feels far enough away for the illusion of reality to completely shatter. We are not conquering space. Space is consuming our minds. And the worst part? We keep signing up for the trip. We have an undeniable, terrifying attraction to self-destruction, provided it comes with a patriotic banner and a clean trajectory. It's not exploration. It's suicide wrapped in science. It's not exploration. It's suicide wrapped in science. This isn't a future we build. It's a primal impulse we indulge, an evolutionary glitch that mistakes novelty for necessity. We are programmed for immediate reward, the dopamine hit of the new horizon. Our frontal lobe, the part we think makes us civilized, is constantly overruled by the ancient reptilian brain yelling, "Go look, go touch the shiny thing." We look at a starship and see progress, see manifest destiny translated into titanium hulls. Evolution, the brutal accountant, sees a poorly designed cage for a creature that needs specific gravity, specific light spectrums, and constant microbial diversity to maintain even baseline sanity. Our minds aren't meant for the vacuum. They require the noisy, vibrant clutter of a planet that spent 4 billion years meticulously sculpting the exact sensory environment we mistake for normal. When you pull an animal out of its native biome, it doesn't thrive. It gets sick. It dies alone. We have simply elevated that dying process into high-budget spectacle. Stop calling space the final frontier. It is the final, predictable mistake. It is the graveyard of human consciousness, and we are paying billions to dig the holes ourselves. We are trying to build interstellar empires with minds designed to forage for berries and avoid leopards. That cognitive mismatch is the single greatest technical hurdle, and it is fundamentally unsolvable. You can shield the radiation, you can generate artificial gravity, but you cannot replicate the 4 billion years of coevolution between human psychology and the complex feedback loops of the Earth's atmosphere. You simply can't. The greatest barrier to the cosmos isn't the speed of light or the limits of fusion power. It is the 3-pound lump of wet electricity behind our eyeballs. And the deepest irony of this entire spectacular, costly endeavor, we flee this planet seeking profound truths about the universe. But the most profound truth, the truth that binds us absolutely to the soil, is the one we carry with us, packaged in soft tissue, waiting for the silent dark to finally make it snap. We were warned. We just refused to listen to the screams coming from our own heads. We spend our fortunes trying to defeat gravity, radiation, and the speed of light, believing these are the enemies. Foolish. These are trivial engineering problems. The true obstacle, the one that guarantees our spectacular failure, is much smaller, much softer. It is the 3-pound wet circuit board running the entire operation. Our minds are luxury devices, custom-built for a planet teeming with biodiversity, complex social feedback loops, and the steady, comforting hum of the biosphere. Pull that plug, the circuit fries. The final irony of the space age is that we are not colonizing the cosmos. We are guaranteeing our own extinction, just on a grander stage. The dream of the starship is the ultimate expression of the runaway ego. A profound declaration that we are smarter than 4 billion years of natural selection. We are not. You will never build a robust, sustainable off-world civilization because the foundational creature, the human, is fundamentally non-viable outside its terrarium. Stop calling it the next chapter of humanity. It is the final, predictable page of the chapter we started when the first ape looked up and forgot to look down at the serpent coiled at its feet. It's simple, really. The universe doesn't need to defeat us. It just needs to wait for us to turn against ourselves. That is the fate of every outpost, every colony, every generation ship. Psychological collapse, driven by the inescapable, crushing weight of alien silence. We are not meant for silence. We crave the noise of life, and for that primal need, the cosmos offers only an elegant, echoing emptiness. That is the verdict. We are guaranteed to fail, not because physics is too hard, but because biology is too specific. Go home, look at the dirt, you belong there. That is the terrifying, beautiful truth. They sell you transcendence. They whisper about Mars as the lifeboat. Lies, utter, calculated lies designed to justify the expenditure of an empire, desperate to ignore the ground beneath its feet. The human brain, this delicate, over-engineered piece of ancestral primate machinery, demands sensory feedback. It needs the infinitesimally complex smell of ozone after a rainstorm. It craves the messy, beautiful competition of a functioning ecosystem where threats are real and predictable, not abstract and pervasive. Take that away, you don't just get loneliness, you get neurological atrophy. We lose the subtle social cues, the ambient sensory data that confirms our reality. That confirmation is what separates sanity from the void. In the sterile tube of a colony ship, that confirmation is gone. The silence is not peaceful, it is corrosive. It is the sound of the machine grinding to a halt because it ran out of context. The brain is selfish. It doesn't care about astrophysics. It cares about whether the nearest primate is friend or foe. We took the tribal structure, the only thing that historically keeps the runaway ego in check, and we tossed it into a sterile metal can. Then we pushed that can millions of miles away. What did you think would happen? This is the final, pathetic act of the species. We didn't learn how to master ourselves, so we ran away. The cosmos does not reward cowards. It simply mirrors the void we carry inside. The great filter, the catastrophic bottleneck that prevents intelligent life from reaching true galactic maturity, is not out there among the pulsars. It is right here. It is the 3 pounds of gray matter that convinced itself it could beat 4 billion years of specialization. We are the flaw in the system. The ultimate singularity we chase is not technological, it is psychological. It is the inescapable moment the collective human mind finally recognizes its total dependence on the specific chemistry of the dirt beneath its feet. Right before that connection is irrevocably severed. The ultimate verdict is delivered by the oldest mechanism of all, natural selection. We are evolutionarily unfit for the dream we constructed. Look at the ocean, smell the pine needles, feel the uneven texture of stone worn smooth by water. That is the only immortality you will ever be granted. The continued survival of the only home where your mind makes sense. Everything else is a dangerous delusional hallucination. Forget the stars. Forget the empty promise of escaping the gravity you earned. Humility is salvation. The Starship Enterprise never launches. It always ends in the cold, inevitable breakdown of a lonely, frightened ape. Millions